So, for those of you that do not know me, my name's Tabitha Mixon, also Tab's Inner Voice. A few years ago, I was trying to deposit a check. I got my, it wasn't my first gig, but maybe it was my first one that was like Tab's Inner Voice. I was so excited. I was like, all right, I'm doing the thing. It's for real this time. And so I went into the bank and I was like, hey, I'd like to deposit this into my account. And they're like, who's Tab's Inner Voice? And I was just like, that's me. I'm like, yeah, this is great. And they're like, no, we have no like physical, indication of that's a real person or entity. And I'm like, oh. So they told me basically that I had to incorporate. And the way that you can do that is through Sunbiz. And so that was how I had to start figuring out things on my own on how to actually become a business. And it kind of sparked a lot more of my research and also my desire to share with you guys some of the hardships that I found and so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls that I have fallen into. I'm going to try and talk for maybe like 75 to 90 minutes. I'm going to try and keep it as quickly as possible, but there's a lot of things that I want to talk about. So I'm going to try and get those in before we do questions. So if we can, like maybe just write down your question as it comes up because you may forget about it later if you're anything like me. And things we're going to be talking about are foundational type situations, options for getting auditions and jobs, tips that you might want to consider. I've noticed through being in the business and being on set, rates, those are very important, I think. So that trying to give like a simplification of how to kind of give yourself a minimum, if you will. Usage and terms, that's going to be probably my most important topic. So we're professionals, we should act like it. Businesses actually track their money. They make intentional choices on how to be profitable. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to say no, and sometimes it's more often than we like. Therefore, we strategically choose what we say yes to. Some foundations. You need to open a business account with your bank, unfortunately. But it usually is free. You can do it with any bank. It doesn't have to be the one that you currently have. Maybe you don't like them. If you do open it with a name other than the one that is on your birth certificate or social security, then you would probably need to incorporate that business name. And you can do that, like I said, with sunbiz.org. You just go to incorporations. You can do an LLC, you can do an S Corp, a C Corp. There are pros and cons to each one. I personally have an LLC just because that seemed easier at the time. All right, then the next thing you want to go to is getting a website. All right, it's not very difficult. I use mine through Squarespace. You don't have to use that one. That one may be a little bit more expensive, but at the time when I did this, like it was before Wix kind of like bumped up their game. So if you want to do Wix, they're a little bit cheaper. And so they've come a long way if you're interested in them. Obviously, there's also other places like WordPress. But no, I'm just kidding. They've also come a long way. When you set up your website, you will have a domain. That's the thing that you type in at the top and says .com or whatever, .org, whatever you want to put in. And then, of course, I have a custom email that is very optional. I think it looks more professional and, less spammy. But then also there are the parts where they have to kind of like crawl your website. When I say they, like the interwebs. So let's say that you kind of have to prove yourself when you have a new email. So the first time that you start sending stuff out, if you send a lot of like pictures and stuff, they'll kind of like maybe flag you as suspicious, things of that nature. Or if you just do mass send out of emails, that looks bad too. So basically, you may have to get some traction on that before it actually does what you want it to or get to the right people. So maybe just send it out to your friends and be like, hey, I want you to mark me as not spam. Really appreciate you. Okay, bye. So if you want to send me your emails, be sure to let me know. I'll be sure to do that. Now, the next part is the fun part. You need to track your transactions. That would be your expenses and your income. You can do this through Google Worksheets. This could be some other platform. I personally use Wave Apps. There is a paid and a free version. If you look at the worksheets that I provided to you, the second worksheet is going to tell you all of the breakdowns of things that I pay for on a monthly or annual basis. Some of it's for voiceover. I do voiceover, but I did kind of indicate as to which ones are on camera, off, or both, like your cell phone. So the transactions that you're going to be tracking would include anything that you pay for your business. Maybe it's not all going to be tax deductible, but if you want to use a CPA, they'll help you through that. And then it never hurts to track it regardless of whether it actually ends up being a deduction. And then I'm also going to talk about deductions. But if you are profitable, I do suggest that you set aside 15 to 20% of everything you make for taxes. And what I do, I put it in a separate account altogether, just so I don't touch it. All right. And so maybe every month, maybe every quarter, you put it over in this other account. I use a high yield savings so that it actually accrues growth while it's sitting there for however long you let it sit. Now, technically, if you are making profit, then you would also need to pay in quarterly taxes. We call those estimated taxes. You would go to irs.gov, go to the pay tab and estimated taxes, and then you can pay in what you estimate your taxes to be. It's a little convoluted to explain that one, but that's another topic for another night. So there are several deductions that you may or may not know about. Gas mileage right now, it's 70 cents a mile. Whenever you are tracking these things, you might want to put the date, how much you spent. You wouldn't put necessarily gas mileage with all of these things, but I'm just letting you know what they are. Office supplies, web hosting, parking for tonight's event, or education, registration for tonight's event. That's also tax deductible. Branded clothing, like the shirt that I'm wearing right now, this is a tax deduction. The clothes that you're wearing tonight, probably not. Anything that you want to buy for auditions, unfortunately, unless it's like really out there, like you would stick out like a sore thumb if you were out at a meeting somewhere, you're probably not going to be able to deduct that, unfortunately. That's something that I kind of figured out actually this week when I was researching this. So everyday outfit, that's not going to be something that you can really tax deduct. The makeup I'm wearing right now, I can't put that on my tax deductions, but if I were doing like effects makeup or gore or something like that, that would work. So I put that there. And then headshots, obviously those are tax deductible. If you do use hair and makeup artists for those headshots, those are also tax deductible. Of course, we know hotel food for whenever you're like on set. That's not on set, but when you're traveling for a job, then yes, because when you're on set, they're going to bring you food anyway. And then, like I said, the specific uniform or costume, that would work. Like if you, for some reason, had to buy like a police cop uniform for a job, but usually they're going to take care of that. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. So there are several options for ways that you can actually get jobs. It's important that you find what works for you. What works for me may not work for you and vice versa, but there are several ways and avenues for you to explore along the way. You may choose to start with just one, check out as many as you like, see what suits you and your niche best. Some of us may enjoy doing commercial work. Some of us may prefer like film or theater. And I personally am in the commercial camp. So some of us may already have agents. Some of us may be here tonight with our agent, and some people are maybe looking. There's many ways to get agents. One that I basically stand true to, or of course, if you know someone that's like, hey, I really like my agent, you should work with us, whatever, then that's a great option. You can just like Google agents in the area that you want to be represented and check out their website, see how reputable they are. And then you would check for their submission requirements on that web page. That would give you all of the information on what it is that they are looking for whenever you're submitting. And sometimes this is like a test, okay, to see how well you can follow instructions. And then of course, like the audition submissions, they're the same way. If like they're really specific on how you title all of your auditions, then they might be looking for somebody that's going to be like reading the instructions. They may ask for things such as reels, a resume or CV, and headshots. Please guys, please do not use AI for headshots. Like, I feel like that's just like a given, but I also have seen it happen and I'm like, what are you doing? So typical fees for agents are going to be 10 to 20%. 10 is going to be for union jobs. The 15 to 20 are for non-union. Sometimes the 15 are for the exclusive types. and you want to make sure whether or not they are exclusive. Like I said, you can ask for a referral from a friend if you're interested in being or working with their agent. That might help you get your foot in the door. By the way, if they don't answer you, it's okay to resubmit. I would wait maybe 6 months to do so. Sometimes it will tell you like, hey, we prefer that you wait a year. Or, the thing is like, it's not necessarily that they're not interested. Maybe they're waiting for you to update your headshots. Maybe they're waiting for you to get more work under your belt. And then maybe they just have somebody on their roster right now that's like already got your look or, your style or something like that. And they might, kick them out in a year and then you get your opportunity. So, things that I would ask agents when you're interviewing with them, you need to know if they're exclusive and you need to know what types of gigs they're going to be sending you for what region and what their commission is. So, this one's a little controversial. Please don't hate me. Something that's becoming more prominent, I'm not saying everybody's doing it. There's something we call commission and agency fees or agent fees. Some of them are taking both. I call this double dipping, but this is just marketing, okay? So whenever you see on, let's say, Actors Access, you see a job, you see the rate, and then it says plus 20% AF. Okay, they are gonna pay that. You're not. If it has minus, then you are. But regardless of whether those letters and numbers are there, you're gonna pay 20% or whatever their percentage is out of your cut regardless. So they're getting that percentage and yours. So you can take that how you like. Payment terms, you need to know when they're gonna pay you. More than likely it's gonna be net 90, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna take the whole 90 days, but I think is kind of like a buffer just in case it is like a bigger production and it takes a little bit longer to get that payment, right? You can also have more than one agent, especially if they are not exclusive. It's not like in the same region. Sometimes if it's in the same region, they don't really like that. But as long as they know that you have other agents and where they are, that kind of helps to have with the communication. Open communication is going to be key for all your agents or managers. I don't have a manager right now, so I haven't really been able to get a whole lot of traction with figuring out how that works. But when I do, I'll be sure to let you guys know. All right. So if you are on the lookout for either a new reel or maybe you want somebody to review yours, I'll be happy to do that. If you see down at the bottom of the first page, there's a discount code for like 10% off. I either will help you like make you a new reel if you're interested. At the end of the month, I just have that discount code going away. And so feel free to hit me up for that. Or if you just want to email me, that's fine. Basically, it's under like tabsinnervoice.me and Reels for Actors if you're interested. Also, there's pay to play options. These are platforms online that have casting calls that are there for anybody as long as they are willing to pay the upfront cost to be on the platform. Many of them might be Actors Access, Backstage, Casting Networks. Casting.com is one of the newer ones. Also, if you do have an agent and they have casting calls for one of those platforms, they may be able to set you up a profile for them where you don't have to pay, but you can only submit on that platform for the jobs that they send you, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's at no extra cost to you. Networking, this one's my favorite. So this is like the opportunity where you get to like meet local people just like you guys, or with the Filmmakers Association, or like I also meet with the creative collective here in town. It's really helped me to kind of build relationships with production people and other ways to kind of like get to know other groups that are doing this and to get opportunities and get my foot in the door and just like meeting new people. It's also way less competition that way. Because it's not really a casting call, right? They're just like, oh, hey, you'd be really good for this. Can you do this real quick? And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? That's been one that I've really enjoyed working on. Marketing is a little different than networking, in my opinion. I'm just using these terms for myself. You can call it whatever you want. So these are going to be like cold reach outs. This is called outbound, right? Basically, you would maybe email people, social media DMs, You can use content or even making your own ads, cold calling like production companies as well. Engagement, I say, like, if a production company in particular maybe makes a ad or are working on something and say, hey, like, we just wrapped this blah blah blah, and maybe they show some BTS or maybe a clip or something, you can comment on it. That's engagement. That's something letting them know that you exist, and maybe they want to work with you in the future. But you kind of have to, like, keep consistently bugging them. Basically, they're not going to consider it bugging because there's going to be so much time and different things going on in between there that they're not going to really, like, notice that it's, like, becoming a problem. But anyway, so also getting on casting rosters. So whenever you're hitting up some of these production companies, like, ask, do you have an active roster that you refer to for casting? Maybe they'll hit them up before they put out a casting call, right? So you might, like, get a first dibs. Yes, exactly. But anyway, I did want to briefly go over union. All right. So I don't know if any of you are union. I think one of you might be. Basically, there are perks. There's the pension and insurance that you become available to, but it's not necessarily that you're going to, you have to reach a threshold. All right. And then, of course, there are lower agent fees if you're doing union work. There are annual dues. I did check for you. You can leave and come back, but it is kind of a process and it's not guaranteed. All right. However, there is something called FICOR. That's an option where you can do both. All right. However, you are forfeiting your rights as a voter. You're basically a fee paying non union member. Not right. Union member. All right. And so basically, you get the opportunity to do both. But there are trade offs. You basically have to be eligible in order to decide to do either one at all. Okay. So then I can go back to the other guy. Some tips to consider.